And our next speaker is in the studio. Our next speaker is Henrik Byström, Business Group Lead at Microsoft Sweden. And Henrik leads and develops people, teams and organizations as a business owner of the Microsoft 365 business product at Microsoft Sweden. Henrik holds experience in different business verticals such as professional services, manufacturing, telco, and the public sector. And Henrik believes that the key to reinventing productivity is through moving customers to a more modern working place, a more modern way of working. And he does this by combining skills as an experienced leader, both in developing IT skills as a senior professional and as an experienced business leader. So without further ado, would you please welcome Henrik Byström?
All right, thank you everyone, and thank you for taking the time exploring an area that I think is very interesting, how Sweden digitalized in 7 days and what the learnings was from the COVID crisis that we are in. So my name is Henrik Byström, and as I said, I'm in the business group lead of modern workplace area here at Microsoft. And first a little caveat that it might be a little bit early to talk about what we have learned from the COVID crisis in 19, because we are in the middle of the crisis. So better it had been maybe to talk about what we have learned so far. But before we jump ahead, let's take a look back. So not too long ago, we had a situation where people associated work by going to an office. We had rooms with big open spaces where we put desks in a row, and a lot of people maybe had our own dedicated room, for example. We also saw that if we had a meeting, we would schedule a meeting and reserve a room to be in to have that discussion and meet together and have a communication around what strategies, etc. So, and leaders, they were actually looking into and stating that they needed to have their people around them to be able to coach and follow up on activities and distribute new activities and so forth. And then something happened, because overnight, and the 16th of March in 2020, we had a big shift where the Swedish Health Authority encourages everyone who could to work from home and also to take a social distance to each other. And this was very turbulent times and something that changes everything in a moment. So from one day to another, we had a completely new environment, a new working world. At that moment, the stock market had declined about 30%, and we had a rapid increase of the virus spread that increased very rapidly in Sweden. And we took those encouragement to work from home, literally, and just went home. The city center went completely empty, and we had a new environment to adapt to, where we took our place home using the capabilities that we had, and also used the technology that we had, tried to make some kind of space to work from at home. And we also started to be a bit more flexibly in our perspective of the personal integrity. Now we started to mix personal life and work life in a new way that we hadn't done before. And managers were enforced to start working with a different way of coaching. From one day to another, they had now a new working environment. How should they coach their employees in this new situation? You could actually say that Sweden was digitalized in 7 days. That was a massive acceleration to use of cloud services, for example. We at Microsoft saw that in 1 week we onboarded 12 million new users into Microsoft Teams. In only 1 week, 12 million users. That's a massive acceleration of users. And we could see that in other areas as well. For example, in retail, you could see that online shopping was really exploding. And you could see that also in education, where we closed down on high schools and universities, and we had a quick shift onto remote learning. So a very big acceleration in very few days. And at this moment, the tech industry came together into an initiative called Vi Täcker Upp. And Microsoft in Sweden was very highly engaged in this initiative. Our education team, for example, started to have coaching sessions every afternoon for teachers and how to work with remote learning and how to use new technology and modern tools in the teaching that they were doing. And also we announced the free team initiative, and our partners were putting all hands on deck to help the customers that weren't in the cloud to come to the cloud, and the customers that had started a journey in the cloud to take the next step. We also saw a lot of new solutions come up from creative inspiration. Solutions like how to work with scheduling and planning of healthcare resources, for example. We needed to redistribute the resources that we had in the hospitals to work in the intense care, for example. We also saw the, logistics solutions in retail and other inspirational solutions coming to place. So there was an intense work happening at that moment. And what was kind of interesting also is that Sweden had a sort of unique situation. We were had prepared for having a flying start. In Sweden, we are very used to use internet services from home. We are having a standard in tablets, so we were easily to work from anywhere. And that is a bit different to other countries where they might not have the same intensity in internet use from home, and also maybe worked with desktop computers at work. So this trend with mobility and accelerating cloud services, we had a high usage already at Office 365 services and also in Microsoft Teams especially. And we were actually one of the leading countries in that area. And the acceleration of that in mobility trend, cloud use and mobility trends had accelerated the new trend of activity-based work style that had already started at the moment. And what is also kind of unique to Sweden, or at least the Nordic countries, is the way we see upon leadership, modern leadership that is necessary to apply in this area. And with that I mean leadership that is working with high trust in employees' engagement, and that we are prepared for coaching as the standard of leading, and not maybe only distributing activities and follow that up. And also having a high level of trust in that you can ask any questions, come with ideas and build on others' ideas, and work in a network-based collaboration structure rather than silos. So we had a flying start, but not all organizations had that. We had still organizations that worked with desktop computers, that had locked in their data into local data centers, for example, and that had leaders that were not prepared for having their employees on remote working. And they had a turbulent time now when they needed to shift from one day to another. And now, 9 weeks later, when we look back, we can see that at Microsoft, for example, that we are taking self-leadership for granted. That's a natural part of our culture. We are very used to remote working before, so we were very well prepared. And we did an employee study just a couple of weeks ago to check in and take the temperature of the organization and see how our employees were feeling about this change. And we got the insights that we were, and the initiative that we run that we call the Nya Arbetslivet, or the modern ways of working, is right on spot to the trend. We are loving the way of working in that we can work from anywhere where we want to. But on the other hand, we also draw a lot of insights. We really miss our colleagues, to hang around with them at the office and get the social energy, building us together like the glue for the culture. And also we started to see that we are working in closer groups and more silo-based than we did before. So we need to accelerate in working with a network-based. And we really miss to hang out with the colleagues and get inspiration from a broader audience in the discussion. So when we look into this new world that we are in, we see a couple of new challenges in the everyday life. For example, how do you lead an organization working from a distance? It is a bit different when you coach and lead from a distance versus when you have people around you in the face-to-face meetings and in your everyday life at the office. And how do you maintain the corporate culture as a social glue? That is so super important when building the corporate culture. That is the social aspect of how you work together. And how do you do that when you work from a remote environment and remote culture? And how do we ensure to have a safe working environment? When you're at the office, you can ensure that people have all kinds of inspirational furniture and so on to meet their needs, whatever they are. But when people are working from home, how do you manage that? And also, how do you manage the social aspects of this? How maybe you have an employee that is sitting by themselves in a one-room apartment somewhere, feeling lonely, and you need to take care of that as a leader. And how do you get the most out of the digital way of working in digital meetings? I mean, it's fantastic now that we can work with digital meetings, and that I think has been super clear for everyone what a benefit that is. But online collaboration is so much more than working with just video meetings. It's a much broader way of working with documents, working with information from different line of business system, getting the most inspiration from insights from wherever the information are. And that is why Microsoft Teams is built up as it is, as a platform for collaboration and not only a video communication solution. That is also important, of course. But how do we handle the huge flow of information as well? Are we?
It's okay.
Keep on. And how do we manage the huge flow of information? I mean, now we create more information in 1 year than we maybe does in history before. And when we get all this kind of information, how do we get help from sorting and filtering out what is the most essential for us, so that we need to do in our everyday work, and information that we need to have in our everyday work? And how do we take advantage of these new opportunities that are arising? I mean, every crisis has a lot of challenges, but when we come out and look back, a lot of new ideas and innovations has been created, and we should accelerate the most insights from that. And that is bringing us into some other learnings here. Companies and organizations that had started their digitalization journey was better equipped than the others. For example, City of Stockholm onboarded in just 4 days 28,000 students and 4,500 teachers in working from home with remote learning. That is a huge acceleration, but they were prepared. They had started the pilots and working and discussing how to work with this.
Can you please use that one, this one?
That brings us into the other parts of learning. That remote working will increase, and it's here to stay. So we have seen the benefits of it and how to work with remote working. That is super great for us. Now we can balance our work life and personal life. We get more time for maybe training and exercising. We skip the commute travel, and we get more time over for managing things at home as well, while combining with the great work, of course. And that makes us into traveling. That will definitely decrease. We will reevaluate every business trip that we are making. When does it really make a difference to meet face by face, for example, traveling to another city? And when can we do that by online meetings? We have seen that it works, and it's great for us. And that brings us into virtual meetings that are here to stay, definitely. We have seen the benefits, and we see that it works. Another area that is super important now is security and compliance that increase in importance. We see that cyber criminals are also taking the opportunities now that everyone is online and try to bring big business for them. And we need to stop that. We need to make sure that we put trust and security high up on the agenda to make sure that everyone can work safe and secure when working from a distance. But when we also move now into the cloud, we get new opportunities in compliance product that can help us to work in a compliant way and follow different regulations and business process rules. And to this, leadership and culture must adapt to the new normal, because we are going to a new world, and we need to be working with a new way with coaching and leading employees into this new situation. Because what is super clear is that digitalization will move to the next level. We have now seen that we can work from distance, and we will take for granted that every information there is will be available for us wherever we are working, independently of what system that it originally originates from. So looking into this and to what's next, we can see that the pendulum has shifted very far out into an extreme situation that we are in at the moment. And we have seen a lot of benefits of this, that we can work from distance, but we also seen the limitations. And that is something that we will look into and take learnings from. The pendulum will swing back, but not the full way to where we were before. We will get into a new normal and a new norm. And that is something that we will take the good learnings from the big benefits of this situation, but also learn from what wasn't working very well and take that into the new situation. And that brings us into to summarize, where we can see that change is the new normal, and we need to adapt to this by lifelong learning and challenge ourselves. That is that change is always happening. For example, we can see that today we have the crisis in Corona, but just looking back in this year 2020, we had UK leaving the EU, for example. We have trade negotiations between China and United States, and so forth. So big things are happening, oil crisis or whatever, and that lands into our and the new organization or products to develop, etc. That affects our organizations and way of working. And trust is the fundament in leadership and in building culture. We as leaders must have full trust in our employees, and the employees need to have full trust in us as leaders. And it is a super important fundament when building the culture. That, on the other hand, is super important for attracting talent. And digitalization will accelerate. Everything must be accessible from anywhere at any time. We just assume that. We see that it worked now in the Corona time, so why shouldn't it in the next days? And as we talked of, when we create so much information that we do at the moment, we need help of sorting and filtering, and AI will help with us with that, and accelerating what that will support us to the expected results. And if we combine this together, that will empower us all to achieve more. So if you found this very inspirational, I hope you did, please go to the website nyaarbetslivet.se and download the white paper of New World in Work and Work Reworked, or maybe schedule a workshop. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Will you take a step forward to the next square?
Yeah.
That'd be great. Look, my apologies for the microphone challenges
Sure.
we had during your session. But one of the things that I remember, I saw one of your other colleagues, I think it was Ulrike Jonsson, speaking at another conference last year that I was hosting, and she was talking about, the sort of the nya arbetsliv, how did you say it?
The nya arbetslivet, yes.
The DNA project, but the new way of working, the new working life.
Yeah.
That she was saying that, work isn't a place you go, it's the things that you do.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly.
I think we have proven that these days, right?
We have done that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that now that we've done that, one of the things that is really curious to me is the thing you talked about around the corporate culture and that social glue, and the fact that so many people miss their colleagues. And in fact, the seminars that I've been doing online, that has been the number one thing. I can't wait to interact with people again. Mm-hmm. So what do you see that technologically, what can enable us to make that social glue happen?
Well, first of all, putting on video when you have a meeting is a great way, because body language is very much more expressional than just voice. So, and that also adds a perspective of who you are, and you see people smile, and a smile is actually, it's working through the camera as well.
Absolutely.
So, and that is one thing, and then. When we have meetings in real life, we tend to talk about social things. How was your weekend? It's very warm today. Fantastic. The summer is coming to Sweden, etc., etc. And when we are online, we tend to just schedule the meeting at 30 minutes, start at the right point, and add 29.50 seconds later, right? So, but please take a moment to interact with each other and build a social glue. But you could also actually schedule sessions. We, for example, in our team, we have check-in meetings a couple of times a week, and just take a discussion around the table. So what's your top of mind? How are you feeling? Is everything okay? And so on.
Obviously Microsoft has the ability to, gather enormous amounts of data from their users.
Yeah, sure.
And how many million more users did you have?
So we added 12 million users in just 1 week, and to me that proves
In
that
what area?
in Teams,
in
in
Teams?
Microsoft Teams. Yeah. So
Wow.
in my world, that proves that the cloud is actually working. I mean, think of onboarding 12 million users in 1 week. That's massive.
Yeah.
And today we have 44 million daily active users. So we have accelerated with 24 million in just these short periods.
That's an enormous change. And when you think about all of those people now working in that new way, and finding that, one of the things that you talk about in Microsoft, work is not a place, it's what you do. But I talk about it as work is rituals, that our working life is based around many, many rituals. We put on a suit, we go to the office, we behave in a certain way, meetings have a certain structure. And one of the things that this pandemic and the lockdown has done is it's ripped up that rule book in a lot of ways. And so I think there's also an opportunity for us to develop new rituals. And you mentioned a couple there where you're just having online meetings.
Yeah. And also, actually, I follow some of these rituals in my everyday work because I put on great clothes, maybe shirt and so on. Yep. I have a colleague that always puts on his shoes when he goes to work, even when he works from home, right? Yep. Because that is the ritual, going into work mode.
Yeah.
So I think that having those rituals is very important.
Yeah,
and that is also because you need to separate when are you going to work and when are you staying at home, right?
Exactly,
because we tend to mix that, and it's fine as long as we know we are doing. Yeah. Because otherwise, I mean, if work isn't the place you go to and you can do it all the time, then you can work every time and you can overwork, right? Yeah. So you need to bring that balance, and that's also where My Analytics, the service in Office 365, is very useful to help you to get insight, that you focus on right things, and that you get time for taking the time off as well.
Yeah, I thought what you said about this Sweden had like a big head start, having 98% internet coverage, 50% on fiber, so good high speed internet. But in other parts of the world, has there been bigger challenges?
Yes, we have seen that.
Have you got any stories you can share?
Yeah, we can. I've heard from my colleagues in Southern Europe, for example, where they don't have the same situation with. They have a broad internet use as well, but not as Sweden, and they don't have as well broad acceleration of mobile devices. So they were put into a completely new situation. I mean, should they transport all the desktop computers, for example, to their homes and with all screens? So I mean, we just brought our tablets home and we continue to work, right? So that is a big difference. And how do you? I mean, we can use video, we can use all these services, we can upload data, documents, etc., etc. But if employees don't have that services at home, how do you do that in the acceleration? So I think that is a great benefit for Sweden and the countries that have that flying start. Yeah,
I think that a couple of things that have come up today, around the tools that we have to work with, and the fact that many of the tools we work with at home, the consumer devices are working better than the home ones. Have you at Microsoft really had any thoughts about around that, based on, what should we develop next? Or have you been talking about what we see that we could do better?
Yeah, we announced a couple of things already. I mean, we have a very open interaction with our users. It's called User Voice, for example, where you can add ideas that you have, and the most popular we will put into the roadmap.
Fantastic.
And a few of those we announced now that we accelerate the development on. For example, having 3x3 videos in Teams and so forth. So a lot of these things, raise hand function and so forth. Background images, so you can have the AI, because I mean, when you're at home and your wife comes in with coffee maybe, or your son or whatever, and maybe you don't want to get disturbed, and you can have the AI function. And that brings us into the next thing. As I ended up this, I think AI is the most important. We will accelerate innovation in AI, and it will be the most natural. And we today use a lot of AI, but we don't think of it. And that is the perfect way of when AI is helping us without we need to think of that I'm using AI now. I mean, AI is not only robots; it's services that helps us.
Yeah. When we talk about AI, it's come up on almost every talk today. So it's obviously, a incredibly hot topic. But there is also a lot of fear around that, and I mentioned it earlier in the day. There's a lot of fear around AI, and what it will mean. What do you see that AI will enable?
So AI will help us to do the things, the administrative tasks that we don't want to do actually, that the computer can make for us. And that has been so through history always, right? New technology comes and helps us with taking administrative or burdening tasks. Because there are studies also showing that AI will create a lot of new work, right? We need, for example, to upskill in programming skills, and we miss actually 70,000 competences in people with technology competence only in Sweden.
Wow.
So we really need to skill up on all areas when it comes to technology. So and AI is of course a driver here. So I'm not worried for that. I can understand when you read the report and see that 50% of the employees will get laid off, right? But that is, they will be balanced with other jobs being created. So I think there is still the mix of the human mind and the AI. That is the perfect mix, I think. Because AI, I mean, it's only a computer doing things, right? So you need a human. The human brain is very powerful.
And I think that the acceleration of this development of AI to help us with our productivity, I mean, we've already seen it through our Microsoft products that I'm getting my weekly analytics about how I'm working. And I find that really fascinating. And as someone who's, obviously not technical, I've got my cue cards on paper today. But, for me, I find that really fascinating that you're having this overview of how I'm working, what I'm doing, what I'm spending my time on.
And have you made any changes in this?
Well, actually, one of the things that I really wanted to change was around how much time I spent on email.
Yeah.
And so I started monitoring how much time I spend on email and not having it open all the time. Because when I started seeing the numbers that were there, I was like, this is a crazy amount of my working life that I'm staring at this, it's a tool, right? It's a communication tool.
Yes, it is.
But I was actually letting the email drive my productivity during the day rather than basing it around that tool.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great example. And I had, for example, a situation where I had a lot of multitasking in meetings. I was sending emails during a meeting, and that was a habit. I thought that is rubbish, right? That is impolite to sit in a meeting and do other stuff. So I really worked on that and almost totally made that go away.
That's fantastic.
I also used that inside report to look into when do I spend time at work, for example, late at night, weekends, and so on, to make sure I get time for reflection and time off as well. Because as we say, when you can work from anywhere, anytime, you can also work all the time, right? So
and that is a huge problem. One of the things you talked about as well, and to the people who are sending through questions, I apologize if I can't get to them, but my communication tablet's not working right now, is that trust is fundamental to culture. So I think that the things that you talked about give us a level of transparency over the way we're working that we can distribute out into the organization. And how could we use that to enable more trust?
Yeah, so I think trust is so multidimensional. But one thing is that we need to have trust in each other. For example, we are doing a task together and we haven't been working before. I need to rely on that you do your things and I do my things, and we create great result. Maybe I come up with an idea, you respond to it, and so forth. And that we also need to do in the digital world. So if you, for example, bring up an idea and put it on Jammer, I can act on that and interact with you and say, great idea, I want to be part of your project, or put a like or so. If you put that idea up and nothing happens, you will not put any more ideas there. So then we'll put that away. So trust is built on that we are doing things and work with each other. The more open you are to me, will be more open to you. And that is a classic communication model. The Johari window. Yeah, you know that. So I think that is one thing. But the other thing about trust is also around technology and cybersecurity, as we talked about, and that you can feel confident that we are taking care of your data in a safe way, and you can feel confident that everyone is working with you, being able to work without being skimmed or whatever. So we can help you out with that, because the cyber criminals are really creative, and we need to stop them.
Yeah. One of the previous speakers, Oscar, was talking about leaving digital traces. Yeah. And that, when you're working remotely and everything you're doing is sort of happening out of everybody's view, that our ability to communicate and interact with each other can be really improved by leaving digital traces. And I think that some of the analytics that I get from my 365 could be a great enabler of that.
Yeah, and that is also something that we talked about in the Build conference that we just had this week, is how we look upon information. Classically, we look upon it that this is a document, and here is another document, and this is a third document. And maybe we combine and copy paste and so forth. In the long run, we will see that we have information needs for some specific purpose.
Yep.
And we will get help, and we will bring in that information independently of from where it comes into the information source that we have for this specific task that we are doing. It sounds a little bit complex, but in the long run, that makes us to have a different view of what information
is. It's a democratization.
Yeah, it's a democratizing of information. Yeah, very well.
Look, I really appreciate you being here, and again, my apologies for the microphone challenge.
No, I hope everything worked.
Yeah, everything worked. But it's great to have you with us. If you could just stay with us for a few moments while I make some announcements.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.